Hello, hello, and welcome to The Humanity of Sales, where purpose meets profit. Oh boy, do we have an amazing show for you today. Often we come on to The Humanity of Sales interviewing amazing people about the things that they're doing within their organizations to help their people, to go over and above for their customers, and to provide more, to give beyond their organization, maybe even to the community or to the world. And we talk about those things a lot, but what we don't often spend time talking about are the things that could potentially block that from happening. That scarcity mentality, the win-lose scenario that sometimes comes up in business. And a lot of these things stem from beliefs, fears, judgments, assumptions that we have built up throughout our lives and we may not even be aware of. Now, I personally spend a lot of time on that, working with leaders. But today, I have the great joy of providing you another resource that you're going to love. Oh my gosh, this guest has written an incredible parable that puts it in a format that is engaging and really drives the point home of the power of shifting what you think and what you believe about money and about how that can lead to more of this humanity in sales and business. So let me introduce him to you right now. I recently interviewed Bill Cates, CSP, CPAE on From Fear to Fire podcast. Now, Bill's the author of 7 different books. He's the founder of the Cates Academy for Relationship Marketing, the host of the acclaimed Top Advisor podcast, and a Hall of Fame speaker. Bill's newest book is The Hidden Heist. Stop robbing yourself of lasting wealth. It's an irresistible tale of financial redemption. I mean, you're just on the edge of your seat waiting for it, right? Well, wait no more. Let me bring on Bill Cates. Welcome, Bill. I'm so excited to have you back on the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Great to be back here. I had a client say to me one time, he said, if I were doing any better, if I was a dog, I'd be wagging my tail.
I love it. So you got 2 of us wagging our tails here. This is great. Now, when I left Bill last time, he did an amazing interview on the From Fear to Fire podcast. And when we left that show, he had quoted a character from the book, The Hidden Heist, that is Bill's, and it's amazing. But the main character is Alden Beckett. And
Right.
he left us with this quote: money is meant to be used and people are meant to be loved. And the trouble starts when we reverse the two. And I can't help but feel like that is a great jumping off point for a conversation about the humanity of sales, where purpose meets profit. So what are your thoughts on how those priorities influence our ability to bring humanity into sales?
Yeah. So first off, before we get into the sales side of things, we know that money is such a powerful force in our lives. I mean, money intersects every aspect of one's life.
Mhm.
And because of that, that's why we think about it a lot. We pay attention. It's hard to get by in this world without money. Um, and so, therefore, people have found a lot of ways to use money as a bit of a weapon, if you will. I mean, you see it in marriages, you see it in other interpersonal relationships, you see it in business, withholding, or just somehow using money as a weapon. And that's unfortunate. Now, look, in business, it's different. Sometimes you're doing deals and you have to negotiate, and I get that. A lot of it just depends on the intention, where it's coming from, and you can tell if someone is being manipulative or if someone is being genuine, and there's quite a big difference. Now, I'll tell you one of the ways that money shows up in the sales process is the willingness to not do a deal, the willingness to pull away from a sale if it isn't right. I do that all the time. I mean, sometimes sometimes I didn't do it, and I should have done it. Right?
Mhm.
It's got to be a right fit, and if we're in a needy place around money, which sometimes we are when we're in sales or in just owning a business, then we will often say yes to deals that we shouldn't say yes to, which usually creates lose-lose situations.
Yeah.
So that's a brief answer to that question.
So, you really hit on something that I think is super important when we're talking about the humanity of sales or the humanity of leadership or humanity in business or whatever, right? Is
Hmm.
that it has to do with the intention, which leads to the energy
Yes.
around it. Someone mentioned to me, you talked about, when we kind of in that needy place, and
Hmm.
someone mentioned to me once that there's like this desperation that people can smell like a dog smells fear, that people can smell this desperation, right? And then there's this crazy energy and emotion attached to money that's not positive. And that's the antithesis of our intent when we're talking about humanity in business. So what
Yes.
are your thoughts on that?
Well, absolutely. I mean, even if you are feeling desperate, even if you're feeling pressed, you've got to be really careful to monitor and make sure that doesn't show up. But sometimes it does, and we don't even realize it, right?
Mhm.
Could show up in willingness to compromise on your price too quickly, right? A lot of people do that all the time.
Mhm.
I've learned the hard way to state my price, my fee, and then shut up and
I still
let
struggle
them
with that one a little bit.
right. And then they say, "Oh, that's really high." Well, compared to, right, is usually my response. Compared to, and it could be well compared to what I expected, compared to what I want to pay. I mean, it's, and then a conversation ensues. Um, but how many times do we trip ourselves up and reduce our ability to earn a fair living, a fair price, a fair fee for what we do, because that neediness shows up. Um, so that, I mean, that's one of many places, and we have to be mindful of that. I'll tell you another thing that kind of is tangential, kind of related to this. There's a school of psychology out there. It's been out there for a real long time called the transactional analysis, and so they analyze the different dynamics between people. And one of the dynamics that communication dynamics you can see in the sales process, particularly, is what we'll call the parent child type of relationship. And so what happens is a lot of folks in sales and business owners, without even realizing it, show up in the relationship as like a child.
Mhm.
And the buyer, the customer, the client is the parent. They have all the control. And that usually comes from some sort of lack of self esteem, lack of value, your belief in your value, lack of confidence, when we really should be on equal footing with the buyer.
Mm.
So that's a very important dynamic that I learned, again, the hard way. Always learn these things the hard way, where I'm on equal footing with them. And they actually want us to be that way,
Yes.
right? Everyone craves an adult to adult conversation, and
Mhm.
whenever it's off, if it's a parent to child, for instance, especially when you're in the child role, you don't want to feel like that as an adult, and so we give up our power. So,
And that respect that we really do want in any type of a business interaction
yep.
is missing when those dynamics are off, like you're talking about. Another one I'm thinking about is that, we talk a lot about generosity as an element of humanity. And I
Hmm.
find that sometimes givers, there are, certain people who are naturally givers
Yes.
by their nature, that sometimes they come with some money stories. And
Hmm.
so you speak a lot to money stories and help educate people on what that is and how to overcome it. This might be a good time for you to share that with some of our listeners.
Well, first of all, in terms of the money story, it's in my book, The Hidden Heist, and it's a story about money stories, I suppose, because it's a parable book, and we reveal through the characters the different ways that people hold money, that their self talk, their personal story around that. But when it comes to generosity, it's sometimes people are generous because they have a lot and they're generous and they like to give and they want to give. Other people are generous even though they don't have a lot to give in terms of, tangible wealth, if you will. But it is their nature. They were just born with a giving nature. Now, actually have kind of a joke around giving and receiving. I'm going to go really fast on this. If anybody plays golf, they understand this metaphor. On the golf course, if a putt is really close, your partner will say, pick it up, or the putt's good, which means you don't have to putt it out, and you run over and you pick it up before they change their mind. So so it's a giving and a receiving dynamic, right? And so my thinking is this, people love to give. You feel good when you give. Okay, that's good. And so when someone gives, there needs to be a receiver. So all my life, I've been an incredible giver. I know I give a lot. I'm practicing on being a graceful receiver. Who am I to deny someone else the pleasure of giving?
I
So
love that.
it's a little tongue in cheek, but we do have to be careful how we receive the gifts.
Mhm.
I had someone a long time ago. This woman complimented me on a tie. I was very young, and she said, "Oh, it's a great tie." I said, "Well, this whole thing, I got this from my dad's closet." She says, "That's a sign of low self-esteem." And I
Wow.
said, "What do you mean?" She says, "No, receive the compliment, right? Because when you don't receive the compliment with dignity, at which it was intended, then you're actually demeaning the giver of the compliment."
That's true.
So this is all to summarize up to a quote that I just heard years ago and love. This a writer, a British writer, Elizabeth Babesco, is quoted as saying, "Blessed are those who can give without remembering and take without forgetting." It's
Mhm.
also been, morphed over the years, give without remembering, receive without forgetting. And so imagine giving without needing the recognition. Imagine being one of those individuals or couples who can contribute millions of dollars to a hospital, to a university, to some sort of a good cause anonymously
Right.
without needing. Now, that's a healthy money story, right?
Yeah.
That's a healthy relationship with money. And so, next time you give, next time you're asked to give, be aware of that. Be aware of, you could click anonymous, but do you?
Mhm.
No, I want the credit. Now look, it's okay. I'm not here to judge anybody. I don't always go anonymous. I get, I want my niece to know I contributed to her charity, right? It's okay. But just that healthy kind of relationship. And then the other side, of course, is to receive without forgetting, which is about gratitude.
Yes.
And so they go hand in hand, of course.
I'm currently and for a few years now working on the receiving side because I'm naturally a giver. And you really hit on something when you said, "Who am I to deprive the other person of the gift of giving?" So I've been working on that receiving end.
Yep.
Now, I believe that money stories and beliefs are kind of hardened or learned early.
Hmm.
But you and I both believe that we can rewrite them.
Hmm.
Do you have any suggestions for people listening now?
Yeah. So, first of all, let's understand. Most psychologists believe that our money stories start to solidify our self-talk, our beliefs around age 7 or 8. So that's it's pretty young, younger than a lot of people realize. And we take in and we absorb the messages from our parents or whoever brings us up, and then society kicks in big time with all kinds of crazy stuff. And so then we start to tell these stories to ourselves so often unconsciously we believe them to be true
Mhm.
when quite often they're fiction. All right, so how do you counterbalance that? Well, one thing to know about the brain is that the brain is wired with nerves, neurosynapses, and there is a wiring there, if you will. You cannot change the brain's wiring. You can overwrite the brain's wiring. You can write new wiring, but you can't change what's already there, and that's an important distinction. That's why it's difficult to form new habits. That's why people will revert back to bad habits, whatever they may be, because that other wiring never really goes away. So yeah, we can use the term rewrite our story, but when it comes to neuroscience, we're really overwriting or writing a new pathway in our brain. So
Mhm.
how do we do this? Well, the first thing is awareness, right? A change has to start with awareness. We have to be aware that there's a problem. We have to be aware that something isn't working. Okay. And then for myself, I became aware of how money worked, how money really worked. Over the last over 30 years, I've helped thousands of financial advisors bring in billions of dollars, billions of assets. And through that, I learned how money works. And as I learned more and more, I realized, whoa, this habit over here wasn't serving me. And what I did here, and how come nobody taught me about compound interest when I was younger? My parents couldn't teach me what they were never taught.
Mhm.
And so for most people, it starts with education. And then with the willingness to reflect back on what you've been doing and the willingness to change. So that's really what it stems from is learning how money really works, being aware of your self-talk, being willing to admit that maybe you were wrong or unproductive in the way you were thinking, and then being willing to make that change. Not always easy, but it can be done, and quite often we need the help of others for that.
Yeah.
So it could be a financial advisor or a financial professional to help us make the right decisions and teach us why we're making those decisions. And when I work with financial advisors, I always tell them, make sure your clients don't only know what you're doing, but why you're doing it,
Mhm.
because then they get it, they understand it, they feel more at ease and more confident with their decisions, etc. So, and or the help could be great friends. It could be a mastermind. I've got a couple of masterminds I've been meeting with for many, many years.
Mhm.
It comes to the principle is you can't see the picture when you're in the frame, and we can't see our own stuff sometimes. We need other people to point it out,
Mhm.
but we have to be willing to have it pointed out, and then we have to be willing to feel a little uncomfortable to make that change.
Yeah, I think that people sometimes are surprised when they hear that a coach has a coach or that an advisor has an advisor. But I
Yes,
mean, that's
yes.
why, there's this continual growth mindset of I don't know everything, I'm learning too. And so we're on the path together. And I like where you say you can't see it if you're in the frame or in the bottle. Sometimes people say, right? You can't see the
Yeah, you
label.
can't, if you're
Yeah.
on the can, in the can, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and even therapists are supposed to work with someone to oversee their practice,
Mhm.
to make sure they're not projecting their stuff onto their clients and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, coaches need coaches. We
Mhm.
all need anything worth doing. It can rarely be done alone.
I agree.
And we, if you think you're the smartest person in the room, then get a new room where there's people
Yeah.
smarter than you.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. And in your book, your parable, the Hidden Heist, which is fantastic, by the
Thank you.
way,
Thank you.
you do a great job of sharing that flow mentality,
Hmm.
moving kind of from scarcity to flow. And
Yes.
and it's really, could you share a little bit of that with our listeners here?
Yeah. So I think as humans, and in fact, I've talked to some neuroscientists that reinforce this, that we're kind of born into scarcity a little bit. It's part of our survival mechanism.
Mhm.
So, to hoard and to collect and to make sure so we don't starve, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of innate. So we're kind of born with that little challenge already there. And then all the other messages we get from parents like, what do you think I am, made of money, or money doesn't grow on trees, and scarcity, scarcity. So that's what we get, right? So now here's the truth. Money is not a scarce resource. Money is an abundant resource. Money flows. Now, it may feel scarce in your pocket, your wallet, your bank account, but the truth is there is enough money in this world where everyone can be doing well financially. There's some systemic things that make it tough. There's greed that makes it tough, and ultimately we have to get into that flow. So the root of the word currency is Old English curren, which means flow like a river.
Mhm.
And in my TED talk that will come out any day now, I'm anticipating the TED talk to go live on the TEDx YouTube channel. I joke, I say, money is an abundant resource and flows like a river, and I'm jumping into the currency. You got a good laugh. So look, when you put $100 in the bank, what does the bank do with that? Well, it loans it to a small business, and then it pays its employees, and then those employees spend it in other places, and then eventually that money might even go overseas, and helps with this business and that. And if in our world now, it's we have an international economy, money flows, and so we just have to learn how to get in the flow. Now, how do we do that? A couple of things. For myself, what I've done is I learned that one way to get in the flow of money is to help other people make money. So that's my model,
Mhm.
and it's not the only model, but it's my model. But a broader principle here to keep in mind. This is really important for salespeople and small business owners, and also important for people who are employees in a company. Money follows value. Money follows value. So if we're not making the money we would like to make, it's possible we're not providing enough value or value that people are willing to pay for. Now,
Mhm.
sometimes it's more than just that, right? Because so you could be an employee and have a position in a company where they're just not going to pay any more money for that role. So you have to maybe go back to school or learn a skill or some knowledge and somehow bring more value to the equation. You may have to actually change to a different company where your talent is recognized and valued, but the principle doesn't go away. Money follows value, and when you know that, then you see the world a little bit differently, and you learn how to play the game, so to speak, to get into the flow.
Mm. That's huge for what we talk about here on the humanity of sales is recognizing that value and
Hmm.
providing more value. Sometimes people are like, "Oh, well, we have to reduce our price." No, you just add more value. And so I love that you brought that up. So there we do this, we talk about this in three different ways primarily. So when we're talking about the humanity in business, we're talking about how we treat our people
Hmm.
internally within the organization,
Yeah.
how we treat our customers, right? And,
Hmm.
and increasing the loyalty there. And
Hmm.
then also how we look beyond our companies in doing something bigger and contributing to our communities as well.
Hmm.
So those
Yeah.
three areas are typically where we spend our time. So I know that you have some thoughts on philanthropy and on maybe one of those other areas. Do you have any stories that you might be able to share as it relates to that humanity within or beyond the organization?
Yeah, actually, a couple of things come to mind. A friend of mine, his name is Nito Quabain. He's president of High Point University.
It's fabulous.
Yeah, and he's become a friend. My daughter went to High Point. He is where I actually initially heard the give without remembering, receive without forgetting,
Yes.
and then I researched it to find out what is the real source of that. Um, but he taught he teaches classes at school, and he taught a class to a bunch of professional speakers, of which I am a member of the National Speakers Association, and he gave everybody five $1 bills. He gave out a couple $1,000s to this group,
Mhm.
five $1 bills. And he said, I want you to leave this money someplace where someone will find it and not know who left it there. So that's back to that, give without remembering.
Mhm.
And man, it was interesting. And so my daughter was with me and her cousin when we were at this conference. And so we're walking through the hotel and we're seeing these $1 bills like in a bush, on a doorknob, it's and so it was a lesson where I could explain to them this idea of giving.
Yes.
Um, I'll tell you another thing is for the longest time, um, I had a scarcity mindset, and I always told myself I had to wait before I would give to charities and be philanthropic. I needed to have enough,
Mm.
whatever that means.
Right.
And then I realized, no, 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 no. Wait a second. Do what you can now,
Mhm.
and then if you want to do more later. But you got to start the flow. You've got to get past that inertia.
Mm,
And so that's what's happened for me. So now I give a lot of money to several different causes that I believe in, but it took time. It grew over time. But if I had never started it, I'd probably still be waiting. I've been stuck in that thinking, right? And so we got to just get started and get the flow going. And then one last thing here, and this is for around business particularly. There's giving to give and there's giving to receive. So in business, a lot of times we do give to receive. We do give and expect reciprocity, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's also valuable in business to give just to give. And so, when you're doing as a business owner, as a salesperson, when you're thinking in philanthropic ways, what is your motivation? Are you giving to receive or are you giving just to give?
yeah.
And when you're clear on that, that's where the humanity shows up. That's where the authenticity shows up because you're clear on what you're trying to accomplish. And then it will show up that way and people will respond accordingly.
Mm. It's so powerful when we can do the right thing or do or give or enjoy
Hmm.
providing more value without an expectation of a response. I think that expectation, the energy of that, it usually will come back anyway, but it's the expectation that causes, I think, that scarcity or that clutching or that resentment if it doesn't come back in that place, because it'll come back, but it may come back from somewhere else.
Sometimes it does. And it's a balance too, because when you're in business, you are providing value, and you expect to be paid in most cases, right? We sell a product, we sell a service, and we're compensated for that, and that's the society we live in. So we can't lose sight of that. We can't just give, hoping it's going to come to us. That's a piece of what we do, right?
Right.
That's a part of who we are, and but we also have to run a good business,
Yes.
and we have to run a profitable business.
Hmm.
And so it's a balance I think, in what you're saying. And they can coexist at the same time, in the same place, in the same human.
They can, and that's when it's most effective,
I
when
think so.
that balance actually occurs. Now
Yeah.
we're coming to the close here,
Yes.
and I will put for, those of you who know me, you'll see in the description and the notes that there'll be information about Bill and about the book and about all that fun stuff. But Bill, if you had to leave our listeners today on the humanity of sales, where purpose meets profit, one additional key nugget from the hidden heist, what would it be?
Oh gosh. Well, from the hidden heist, I would have to say it has to be just the awareness of.
Mm.
So the original title of the hidden heist, um, and now it's a speech that I give, but it's not the title of the book, is "You earn what you believe."
Ooh.
And so the fundamental principle here in life and in sales is, if things aren't working the way you want them to work, then yeah, look at strategies, look at tactics, sure, but maybe take that step back and reflect on, what do I believe about myself? What do I believe about my prospects? What do I believe about my product or service? What do I believe about the industry? What do I believe about the economy? What stories am I telling myself that may not be true or may not be, reflecting the truth, and then are keeping me from actually seeing the solution to the challenge?
Mm.
So you earn what you believe, and to solve the problems, you have to start with what you believe about the context.
That awareness. So important. Now, you talked about awareness, you talked about education, you talked
Hmm.
about willingness. So
Hmm.
many good things here, Bill. And so I really appreciate that. And you know what, listeners, also make sure that you check, because you'll be able to find the website, where to find Bill, and where to find, the hidden heist and any other additional information. Bill, thank you so much for coming on and being generous with your time and your wisdom here on the humanity of sales, where purpose meets profit.
It's my pleasure. I love your mission, and it's my honor to be part of it.
Appreciate it. I told you, didn't I? Bill did an amazing job in helping us to understand a little bit more about some of those money stories. I encourage you to go visit him at thehiddenheist.com or theordinarymillionaire.com. And if you love the show, share it out into the world and make sure to subscribe. Subscribe here so that you don't miss any more of these incredible guests and their insights right here on the Humanity of Sales, where purpose meets profit.